Hey guys, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, thanks. And also let me know where y'all are watching from and at what time. I'm curious. I never imagined breaking a simple rule could unleash such horror. It started innocently enough. A solo camping trip in a deserted canyon in Utah, miles from any town. The towering sandstone walls glowed warmly in the fading sun, the dry desert air whispering softly. A perfect escape from the chaos of life. I was confident, prepared, a seasoned hiker who knew her gear inside and out. But that night, as twilight settled into an oppressive darkness, something changed. The comfortable solitude began to feel like isolation. I reached for my flashlight, clicking it on instinctively, but the darkness refused to budge. Frowning, I shook it. Dead. Strange. I was certain I'd replaced the batteries that morning. Shrugging off the unease, I rummaged through my bag, finding my spare headlamp. I clicked it on. Nothing. Two devices, both inexplicably drained of power. A heavy chill settled around me, unnatural for a summer evening in the canyon. The sky had darkened too quickly, stars smothered by unseen clouds. The silence deepened, every crunch beneath my boots amplified, every rustle of fabric like tearing paper. My heart quickened, the oppressive night squeezing tighter with every passing second. Calm down, I whispered to myself, but my own voice sounded thin, swallowed by the darkness. Fear crept up my spine and instinct took over. I remembered clearly the stern warning at the park entrance. Absolutely no fires allowed. I hesitated, but rationalization quickly overpowered caution. It was just one little fire, enough to soothe nerves and push back the encroaching dark. I gathered dry twigs, hands trembling slightly, arranging them carefully before igniting the match. The flame sprang to life, bright and comforting. The relief I felt was instantaneous but fleeting. The fire twisted oddly, dancing wildly even without wind. Shadows lengthened into grotesque shapes, shifting and clawing at the edges of my vision. Then movement caught my eye. From the deepest shadows something stirred. A figure slowly emerged, silent, barefoot, skin charred black, and cracked like scorched wood. It raised its burnt, broken fingers toward me, lips moving silently, agonizingly, mouthing words I could not understand. My heart thundered as I recoiled in horror. Panicking, I stomped desperately on the flames, scattering embers wildly. The figure faltered, flickering, and vanished instantly into smoke. The air cleared, silence returning as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. Staring into the empty darkness, I felt dread settle deep within me. It was not gone. Something terrible had been awakened, and my nightmare had only just begun. Earlier that morning, under clear blue skies and cheerful sunlight, I'd stopped at the ranger station for the usual formalities. The ranger there was older, his face weathered by decades of sun, his eyes sharp beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. He barely glanced at my permit before leaning forward slightly, voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "No fires allowed out there," he said firmly. "We're under an extreme fire ban. It's been dry, unusually dry. People get careless. Things burn." I nodded politely, used to the warnings, but he leaned even closer, his tone urgent now. "It's more than just a risk of wildfire. Folks around here say the canyons don't forgive easily. You disrespect the land by lighting a flame, it'll summon things. Old things." I chuckled lightly, thinking it was just a scare tactic. I'd heard dozens of similar stories. Every park had its ghost stories meant to scare tourists into obedience. But his face remained utterly serious, eyes hard as flint. "There's legends here," he continued quietly. "Old spirits that died unjustly, burned alive by those who didn't respect the earth. They're restless, trapped between worlds. Folks call them the Scorched Ones. They appear if someone breaks the rules. Don't take this lightly." I hesitated, taken aback by the intensity in his gaze, but I shrugged it off quickly, thanking him and promising I'd be careful. As I walked away, his stare burned into my back, leaving a lingering unease I couldn't shake. Now, huddled in my tent after the terrifying encounter by the fire, I bitterly regretted dismissing his warning so casually. I tried to steady my breathing, attempting to rationalize the experience as a trick of my mind, brought on by loneliness and fatigue. Surely no real danger lurked in these silent canyons. The darkness outside my tent seemed heavier, pressing inward, smothering. Every rustle of fabric, every gust of wind across the nylon walls startled me. Despite myself, I strained to hear footsteps, whispers, anything that might signal another visit from the nightmarish figure. Sleep eluded me. Each time I closed my eyes, the burned face appeared, silently mouthing incomprehensible words. Guilt mingled with fear. Had I truly disrespected something sacred, something ancient? No, I whispered defiantly, voice shaking. It was just one small fire. Yet deep down, dread clawed at my conscience. I knew somehow the ranger's words had truth woven into them. My arrogance had awoken something terrible, something I couldn't yet comprehend. The night stretched endlessly. When dawn finally cracked the sky, the morning sunlight brought no comfort. Something had marked me, I could feel it, and no amount of daylight could ever wash that away. I'd spent the day convincing myself it had all been my imagination, that exhaustion and isolation had played tricks on my mind. Yet, as twilight once again painted the canyon walls crimson, my certainty crumbled into unease. The desert shadows crept longer, darker, hungry things stretching toward my campsite. Despite my better judgment, I stayed another night, determined to prove to myself that fear wouldn't control me. But as darkness seeped in, I found myself glancing repeatedly at the charred spot where I'd made the fire the night before, as though something might emerge from the cold ashes. The moon hung low, casting silver light that made every stone and cactus look ghostly. My breath quickened, the silence feeling oppressive. Even the insects had ceased their song, leaving the canyon utterly lifeless. Then came a rustle, subtle and faint, yet distinct. My spine went rigid. Turning slowly, heart hammering, I squinted into the gloom. There, just beyond the fire's remains, stood the same grotesque figure from the previous night. Its presence radiated sorrow, agony etched deeply into every charred feature. Blackened skin crackled as it moved, burnt fingers flexing, reaching toward me in mute desperation. Who are you?" I stammered, throat tight with fear. The figure's lips parted painfully, forming silent syllables, its voice a rasping echo of smoke and ash. Though I strained, the words remained just out of reach, ancient and alien, resonating somewhere deep within my bones. Panic flared. I scrambled backward, knocking over my pack. My water bottle rolled away, spilling precious drops into the dirt. Clumsy fingers found my phone, useless without signal, but still I clutched it desperately, seeking comfort in its familiarity. The figure drifted closer, movements slow, agonizing. Flames seemed to flicker briefly beneath its skin, illuminating veins of ember red beneath layers of charred flesh. I felt its gaze burn through me, pleading yet accusatory, a sorrowful accusation I didn't fully understand. "No!" My scream echoed sharply against the canyon walls. Acting purely on instinct, I grabbed handfuls of dirt, flinging them wildly at the ghostly apparition. The figure paused, shimmering briefly, then vanished entirely, leaving only empty shadows behind. Silence returned heavier than before, suffocating. My limbs trembled uncontrollably. I sank to the ground, staring helplessly at the cold, empty space where it had stood moments ago. I desperately wanted to rationalize what I'd just seen, but logic no longer offered solace. Deep in my heart I knew this wasn't exhaustion or paranoia. Something real and profoundly unnatural had touched my life, and no matter how far I ran, it wasn't done with me yet. It had been weeks since I returned from that cursed canyon, but the memory of the scorched one lingered like a festering wound in my mind. Sleep became a luxury. Nightmares punctuated by charred fingers and sorrowful eyes haunted my nights. Yet, as the days passed without incident, I desperately convinced myself it was nothing more than a traumatic delusion born from loneliness and fear. Determined to reclaim normalcy, I went about my life, throwing myself into routine tasks. The mundane comforted me, chores, errands, small rituals of daily life. On one particularly dark evening, the weather outside dreary with autumn's chill creeping in, I decided to light a candle. Just one small flame to dispel the shadows and soothe my restless nerves. The wick ignited easily, casting gentle golden light around my modest living room. The candle flickered quietly at first, warm and inviting. I exhaled in relief, savoring the small comfort. Yet moments later, The flame abruptly surged, doubling in height, casting bizarre, dancing shadows across the walls. My breath caught sharply. A strange pressure filled the room, thick and oppressive. Shadows writhed unnaturally, stretching into distorted shapes that twisted along the walls and ceiling. My heart raced as a chill seeped into my bones, my senses screaming that something was profoundly wrong. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. I spun toward it, eyes wide. There, for just an instant, stood the scorched figure, its cracked black skin aglow with hidden embers. It stared at me from the shadowed corner, lips moving silently with that haunting anguish, its burned fingers once again reaching desperately toward me. "No," I gasped, stumbling backward, knocking over the candle. Wax spilled, flames sputtering weakly before dying in a hiss of smoke. The room plunged into darkness, silence echoing harshly in my ears. I stood frozen, trembling uncontrollably, heart hammering in my chest. The figure had vanished, yet its presence lingered, heavy and accusing. This wasn't isolated paranoia. This was a curse, one that defied logic and refused to be dismissed. Driven by dread, I spent sleepless hours obsessively researching local legends and native folklore tied to Utah's canyons. I sifted through countless web pages, articles, and obscure forums. What I found left me sick with horror. Stories of ancient spirits, beings known as the Scorched Ones, souls condemned by wrongful deaths in flames, forever bound to the living who disrespected sacred grounds. The truth clawed at my sanity. I dismissed the warnings, mocked the legends, and ignited a forbidden flame. Now these entities had latched onto me, bound by my own reckless disregard. The flame I'd lit in ignorance had remembered me, and these tortured souls would never let me forget. I became consumed by my search for answers, a desperate attempt to rationalize the impossible horror I'd invited into my life. Days blurred together as I pored through online archives, local histories, and half-forgotten native folklore, each discovery driving deeper shards of dread into my mind. One particular account chilled me deeply, an old Paiute legend about the Scorched Ones. They were said to be vengeful spirits of people unjustly burned alive, punished by fire for crimes they never committed. Forever condemned to wander, seeking warmth stolen from them in life, they latched onto anyone who dared disrespect the sacred rules of the land. According to these tales, the spirits clung obsessively, appearing whenever their victim lit a flame, trying endlessly to reclaim their stolen warmth. My heart pounded painfully as I realized the severity of my mistake. That one thoughtless fire in the canyon had summoned these tormented souls, binding them permanently to me. Their silent anguish wasn't malicious, it was desperation, an eternal cry for release. Panic set in as I considered the ramifications. Could I never again enjoy warmth without risking these entities appearing? Could something so ancient truly follow me forever? Fearful and desperate, I stripped my home of anything capable of creating flame. Matches, candles, lighters, everything tossed into the trash. I disconnected my stove and bought electric heaters. Friends and family expressed concern over my growing isolation, but I brushed them off. They couldn't understand the terror of my newfound reality. Yet, despite these precautions, peace eluded me. Every dark corner of my home now felt charged with menace. Every flickering streetlight outside seemed to whisper threats. The spirits haunted me relentlessly in dreams, blackened fingers grasping desperately, their voiceless mouths pleading in silent agony. Paranoia grew, a creeping dread at the edges of my sanity. Sleep became torture, my waking hours a fearful vigil against accidental flames. Every shadow took on sinister shapes. Even sunlight offered little solace. It was merely temporary, fleeting safety, until darkness returned to torment me again. Exhausted and near breaking, I sat alone in my cold, darkened living room. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I clutched the printed legends, rereading warnings I'd so arrogantly dismissed. Each word drove deeper remorse into my chest, regret nearly choking me. I was trapped, imprisoned by my own reckless ignorance. Yet despite the bleak despair, a small spark of hope stirred, a fragile, desperate hope that perhaps somewhere buried within these old stories lay a clue to breaking the curse. But until then, I would remain in the cold darkness, endlessly vigilant, haunted by the ceaseless agony of souls I'd never meant to awaken. Winter arrived early, bringing an intense cold that sank its icy claws into my bones. Despite thick layers of clothing and heavy blankets, my house became unbearably frigid. My breath turned to mist indoors, each exhale a pale ghost drifting through my darkened rooms. One bitterly cold night, as icy drafts invaded my home, the heating system groaned ominously, sputtered, and died entirely. My heart sank instantly, knowing repairs were impossible at this hour. Temperatures rapidly plummeted, the chill becoming painful, numbing my fingers and toes, making my body shake uncontrollably. Wrapped tightly in blankets, teeth chattering, I resisted as long as possible, battling fiercely against the temptation to seek warmth. But soon, survival instinct overcame fear. Reluctantly, desperately, I approached the dormant fireplace, long, unused, and covered with dust. My stomach churned with dread, hands trembling violently as I piled logs into the hearth. "Please," I whispered hoarsely to whatever cruel fate watched me, "just let this fire be normal." I struck the match. Flames sparked easily, logs catching fire in moments, blossoming into comforting warmth. Relief flooded briefly through my body, but it lasted only seconds before dread seized me again. The flames surged wildly, spiraling upward with unnatural intensity, roaring like an angry windstorm. From within the flames, the scorched ones erupted into horrifying clarity. Multiple figures materialized, their skin blackened and blistered, faces contorted with silent screams of agony. They crowded around me, flames licking at their charred flesh, eyes hollow and burning with desperation. I staggered backward, tripping over furniture in blind panic, unable to tear my eyes away from their terrible visages. They pressed closer, their cracked hands stretching outward, silently begging for warmth, for mercy. Embers floated in the air, their touch scorching against my skin, burning their pain directly into my soul. "No more," I screamed, tears streaming down my face. The flames surged higher, shadows dancing in grotesque mockery on every surface. Charred footprints scorched themselves into the wooden floor, marking the places the tortured spirits had stood. My home filled with acrid smoke and bitter sorrow. Finally, sheer desperation overtook terror. I hurled buckets of water onto the roaring blaze, dousing the fire in a furious hiss of steam and smoke. In an instant, the apparitions vanished, leaving only darkness and the bitter stench of smoke. I collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, lungs burning, heart broken by the sheer weight of their suffering. My sanctuary had become my prison, no escape from fire, no respite from the curse. But as my tears dried, cold reality hardened inside me. I couldn't endure this alone. I needed answers, a solution, a way out before the scorched ones consumed everything I was. I knew exactly who I had to call. Hands shaking, pulse racing, I dialed the park's emergency contact number listed online. Each ring stretched painfully until finally a familiar gruff voice answered. I nearly sobbed in relief at hearing the ranger from the park entrance again, the only person who might understand my torment. "Please," I begged, words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "You warned me about the fires, the scorched ones. They're real. I'm sorry I didn't listen, but I need your help." For a moment, silence stretched unbearably on the line, so long I feared he'd hung up. Finally, his voice returned, somber and heavy. "So you did it. You lit a fire out there." I swallowed hard, guilt choking my voice. "Yes, I didn't think—" "They never do," he interrupted gravely. "Listen closely. There might still be a way out, but it won't be easy." "Anything," I breathed desperately, heart racing. "I'll do anything." He exhaled deeply, weariness woven through every word. "You must return to that exact spot in the canyon and perform a ritual of apology. Show them genuine remorse and you might appease them. Might—" Fear twisted sharply inside me, cold and bitter. "But how do you know it'll work?" "I don't," he admitted bluntly, voice tinged with sorrow. "But it's your only chance. Go back, build another fire, recite words of apology, offer something meaningful. Your tears, your sincerity. If you're lucky, they'll forgive you." The thought of returning terrified me to the core. But what choice did I have? My life had become a nightmare, my sanity frayed to threads. I'd do anything to be free, even if it meant confronting horrors once more. "I'll do it," I whispered hoarsely, resolve firming. "Thank you." "Be careful," he said quietly, his voice suddenly distant, strange. "They'll test your fear. Whatever you see, whatever you feel, don't let them consume you. The line clicked dead, leaving me gripping the phone tightly, dread gnawing at my bones. I ignored the nagging doubts lingering at the edges of my thoughts. Could the ranger truly know how to end this nightmare? Was this just another cruel trick played by forces I couldn't comprehend? But desperation overruled caution. I gathered my gear quickly, ignoring every internal voice screaming warnings. Hours later, as I drove into the setting sun toward the cursed Utah Canyon, the ranger's grim advice echoed relentlessly. Whatever you see, whatever you feel, don't let them consume you. Yet somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered bitterly that perhaps the worst horrors were still waiting, patient and hungry, in the shadows of that canyon. Stepping back into that cursed canyon felt like walking into an open grave. The familiar sandstone walls loomed oppressively, drained of warmth under a steel-gray sky. My heartbeat quickened painfully with each hesitant step, dread thickening the air, pressing in from all sides. As if sensing my return, darkness descended prematurely, smothering the last traces of twilight. Stars vanished behind an unnatural veil, leaving the canyon utterly black and silent, devoid of life. My flashlight flickered weakly, casting a pitifully dim glow barely enough to guide my trembling feet toward the fire's original site. I knelt beside the charred remains of my first fire, fingers numbly arranging sticks and tinder, every movement agonizingly slow. Terror clawed at my throat, memories of those tormented souls vivid in my mind. Swallowing hard, I lit the match, watching the flame ignite reluctantly, fighting an unseen resistance. The instant the fire took hold, a whispering wind moaned through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of burning flesh. My stomach twisted violently as countless figures emerged from the darkness, surrounding me, encircling the flames like moths drawn to light. The scorched ones pressed close, their charred, mutilated faces fixed upon mine in silent, pleading agony. "Please," I begged tearfully, voice shaking uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Please forgive me." Yet as their hollow eyes stared relentlessly, something dark clicked within me, an awful realization. There was no remorse in their gaze, no forgiveness, only hunger, only need. From the shadows, a new figure appeared, the old ranger. My heart leaped with hope before collapsing into icy dread. His form flickered, skin crackling like brittle ash. His face twisted into a mocking smile, his eyes glowing faintly with embers. "You lied," I gasped, betrayal bitter on my tongue. "They always come back," he whispered softly, voice crackling with malicious amusement. "Always desperate, always afraid. Your fear feeds them, your warmth sustains them." The horrifying truth hit like a physical blow. He wasn't a ranger, he was one of them. He'd lured me back intentionally, knowing my terror would nourish these spirits, helping them reclaim the warmth they'd lost in life. I'd walked willingly into their trap, guided by false hope and desperation. The figures pressed closer, scorched fingers clawing toward me, their silent screams ringing louder within my skull. My terror surged, but survival instinct screamed louder. With a cry of defiance, I kicked violently at the burning logs, scattering flames and plunging everything into abrupt darkness. In the sudden blackness, their presence vanished abruptly, leaving only silence so profound it deafened me. My heart thundered painfully in my chest, panic threatening to consume me entirely. I knew instinctively this darkness was my only sanctuary. The fire brought them strength, but darkness was my ally now. To survive, I would have to face this eternal blackness and the horrors that lurked within, completely alone. Darkness closed around me like a coffin, dense and suffocating. My breath came in shallow, panicked gasps as I crouched motionless beside the scattered embers. Eyes wide, senses painfully alert, I strained desperately to perceive anything in the absolute blackness. Each heartbeat echoed painfully in my ears. The scorched ones circled invisibly in the gloom, their presence palpable in the cold pressure that squeezed tightly around me. I knew instinctively they could not touch me without the warmth of flame, but their anger surged through the air, an oppressive force filled with unsatisfied hunger. Whispers drifted through my mind, fragments of ancient words, painful pleas, mournful echoes of lives extinguished by flames. Visions clawed at the edges of my sanity, fire raging, faces twisted in torment, the scent of burning flesh filling my lungs. I bit my lip, tasting blood, fighting desperately against the vision's pull. "Don't feed them," I whispered fiercely to myself, echoing the fake ranger's words, now understanding their cruel irony. "Don't let them consume your fear." Hours passed torturously slow, each minute stretching into eternity. Muscles cramped, joints screamed in protest, yet I dared not move. The slightest spark, a match, friction, even body heat could invite them back. My resolve frayed to a thin, brittle thread as the psychological torture intensified, darkness pressing inward relentlessly. Then came a sound, a faint rustle. My head snapped up sharply, senses alert. Footsteps approached softly, circling me slowly. My heart hammered furiously, every instinct screamed to run, to fight. But I held still, biting back fear, desperate not to yield a single spark of warmth or panic. "Emily." My name whispered through the shadows, familiar yet distorted, a tortured echo of my own voice. My stomach churned violently. "Please, we're so cold." They mimicked me, twisted my voice into desperate pleas, trying to ignite empathy, trick me into surrendering warmth. Anguish welled within me, tears burning down my cheeks. Each plea sliced deeply, nearly breaking my resolve. But deeper within, a fragile, stubborn determination emerged. I would not feed their hunger. Not again, not tonight. Minutes stretched agonizingly long, their presence slowly weakening as dawn approached. Finally, pale gray seeped over the horizon, chasing shadows away. The oppressive force dissipated abruptly, leaving me drained, trembling, but still alive. Stiffly, painfully I stood, looking out at the canyon bathed in early sunlight. I'd survived, but at an unbearable cost. My innocence, my trust, my sanity, all scorched and scarred, casualties of one reckless fire. As I stumbled toward the trail leading from the canyon, hope rose tentatively within me. Perhaps the nightmare had ended. Perhaps the scorched ones would finally release me from their terrible grasp. But deep down, I knew better. Days passed in a haze, blurred by trauma and exhaustion. Back in civilization, surrounded by concerned faces and endless questions, I felt disconnected, trapped behind a veil of numbness. Doctors diagnosed me with shock, prescribing rest and medication, gently dismissing my haunted accounts as stress-induced delusions. But I knew better. I bore wounds far deeper than their medicine could heal. One afternoon, desperate for closure, I called the park office again. After several frustrating transfers, a friendly voice finally answered my questions. My blood turned icy as they revealed the truth. No elderly ranger matching my description had ever worked at that station. They'd never employed anyone remotely like him. A chilling dread sank into my bones. I'd been deceived from the very start, lured into their trap, manipulated by something ancient masquerading as human. The fake ranger's words echoed cruelly in my mind. They always come back. As evening fell, shadows thickened inside my house. Despite myself, I moved instinctively toward the bathroom, drawn inexplicably to the mirror. An uneasy sensation twisted inside my chest, an unspoken dread heavy upon me. With trembling hands, I flipped on the bathroom light and stared at my reflection, heart skipping violently. My fingertips had darkened, blackened as if scorched, veins traced faintly by burning embers glowing beneath my skin. My eyes stared back hollowly, haunted, tiny sparks flickering deep within their depths. I recoiled in horror, realization striking brutally. This was the final, terrible truth. I'd become one of them. The scorched ones hadn't vanished with the dawn. They had left part of themselves behind, claiming me, marking me permanently. My reckless disregard had cost me my humanity. Tears streamed silently down my face, each droplet sizzling faintly against my heated skin. I felt an agonizing emptiness, an insatiable craving building deep within, colder than ice, yet desperate for warmth. The legends hadn't lied. Those who disrespected sacred laws became cursed themselves. I was now eternally condemned, driven by a cruel instinct to find warmth, to feed on the fear and ignorance of others who would inevitably disregard the rules. In the mirror's reflection, my scorched fingertips reached upward, pressing gently against the cool glass. Flames briefly flickered behind my eyes, my lips moving silently, forming ancient words I now bitterly understood. "Please, I'm so cold." Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the walls of my darkened home, I sensed another careless camper striking a match, igniting forbidden flames. My body trembled uncontrollably, compelled by an urge too powerful to resist. My curse had only just begun,